Riven is the best puzzle game of all time. Okay, you might think I'm exaggerating, and as a sequel to the beloved Myst, it's certainly biting off a lot more than it can chew. Myst came out in 1993 and featured what presented as a fully 3D world at a time where home computers weren't powerful enough to run them. It achieved this by first creating the 3D graphics in an engine, and then taking hundreds of images and linking them together in a graph so that people could point and click through the game world as if it were a 3D environment. For this reason, and the difficulty of Myst puzzles, it took the world by storm and set up Riven to capitalize off of its success. But Riven was not the small sequel most people expected. At the time of its release, you needed 5 separate CD-ROMs that you would have to switch out mid-gameplay because the game world was so big. The story, likewise, was very ambitious. In Myst, you play as a nameless protagonist who stumbles upon a book that transports you to a strange island, and you soon learn that there's a man who is writing these books and creating other worlds. Riven expands upon this idea by creating a plot where the book writer's wife gets stuck in a prison in her home world, a place that they had both long departed. You are to travel to this other place and attempt to save her, while an unknown antagonist undergoes his own plot to learn how to create and harness his own worlds. And navigating this game is simple. You can only point and click. You can choose what direction to move, what direction to look, and you can basically interact with anything of note in the environment. Pretty quickly, however, you discover that unlike Myst, the world of Riven is not set up like a video game, in that the world doesn't feel like it was made by game developers to cater to you, the player. I noticed that there are no tutorials, there are no directions, and it was completely up to me to figure out where to go and what to do next. It took longer than I'd care to admit to find out about the main dynamic, in that the game is supposed to be played from an anthropological perspective. Every area, device, machine, and puzzle is designed by the NPCs of the world, for the NPCs of the world, rather than designed by a game developer for you. This makes you as the player often ask yourself, what is this for? How can I utilize their device creatively to fulfill my goals? This is the most important realization in solving the complex puzzles of Riven, especially considering that it is known for 2 major game puzzles, whose multitude of different types of clues are strewn all over the entirety of the game world. For these reasons, Riven made me frustrated. Riven made me lose all hope just to triumph in some small way with some major insight and immediately fall into a lack of hope once again. The dynamics of the game world and how the puzzles are designed are the biggest contributor to the aesthetic. You feel alone, lost, confused, and way out of your wheelhouse. You're in a world that's not made for you, filled with mystery, hostility, and loneliness. The game's puzzles rely on your ability to fully immerse yourself, because the solutions are so rarely contained in the puzzles themselves, but rather the knowledge of the world, its inhabitants, and its real-life dynamics that you can only learn through careful observation. When I first solved the frog puzzle, I was confused. I had spent 20 minutes trying to figure out what this strange apparatus was, just to be presented with a frog that after no more than 10 seconds hopped right away from me, never to be seen again. It's only until later in the game that I realized how important this interaction actually was. It was never about solving the puzzle and watching the frog hop away. It was about learning that there is a frog to begin with. It was about learning what it sounds like, what it looks like, and what it could be used for. When I got my first look at the Riven Fire Marble puzzle, I had no fucking idea what I was looking at. I felt like I had stepped into the impossible. I didn't know where to begin, and I was left once again scrambling for answers. Riven teaches you how to think. A game that took me 30 hours to complete could be done in less than a single hour with every solution handed to you. I soon found comfort in the world and in my loneliness. I quickly adapted to thinking about puzzles from a sense of why does it exist, rather than simply what is the solution. When I finished the game, I had changed Riven. I arrived on this alien world as a confused and overwhelmed protagonist, but I learned the culture. I can now do math in Denis. I know what the Denis worship and why. I was not a player sitting in my room with a controller in my hand. I was an intuitive and curious envoy who had conquered their world. Most importantly, I learned that the threshold I had for immersion in video games was so much lower than I possibly could have known. It's not all about good graphics. It's about the path of success being locked behind a necessity to believe that you truly exist in this world and that you can wield the environment to change it. I recommend this game to everyone, and believe from the bottom of my heart that until you too have conquered Riven, you have not lived one of the best puzzle game experiences that gaming can offer.